Hey, it's Carrie, and I would love if you shared your story with us. You're listening to Camouflaged Beauty, a podcast of shared experiences for military and veteran women. International best-selling author, professional speaker, an ex-firefighter, unfortunately, and someone who experienced MST but is a survivor. Today, I have Meghann Trapp with me to share her story. Meghann, how are you?
I'm good. How are you?
I'm good. I'm so glad that you're here with us. Just tell the listeners a bit about your military experience and your journey.
Yes. Thank you again for having me. I'm super honored, grateful, blessed to be here. So appreciate you bringing me on.
Of course.
Just wanted to tell you that. So I joined in January 2009. I actually had joined a lot older than comparative to most other people who joined the military. I am from Colorado and I had been a firefighter there for a couple of years and made the decision to come in as a firefighter in the Air Force. And so my journey began January of 2009, went to basic training and kind of took off from there, went to Fire Academy afterwards, which is at Goodfellow. You know, it's a very tough, physically demanding job. And being a female, you got to have really thick skin. You got to be very, you're already up against a lot because you are, I was physically fit and tough and I'm used to it, but we don't have the same upper body as a man. So, it's a very, very, very physically grueling 13 and a half weeks. And at the time, I'm not sure what it is like now. I've heard that they've kind of changed the standards, but going through at that time, you had to pass everything in the same times that the males had to pass it. It had a 95% washout rate for females. So there was like maybe 6 of us out of about 3,000 students. So it was tough, but it was awesome. I excelled at it. I loved it. I was very passionate about it. And got orders to Aviano Air Base, Italy, which everyone's like, how in the world did you get that? Right, first duty station. Italy was amazing. Of course, there, I experienced some stuff from some certain people, unfortunately, in that career field. You, again, have to have really thick skin. There's guys that are going to automatically assume that, you don't belong there because you're a woman. Unfortunately, there is still that biased, those men that have their ego in the way, or they just think that women don't belong in firefighting. And the way I kind of got jabs at them, which I didn't really take jabs, but, I guess the way that I kind of owned that was I would go kick butt on the fire ground and just took advantage of every opportunity given to me, volunteered my time and not only excelled at my job physically and my academics. I was, did really well in my upgrade training and did well in pretty much everything I took on. I had a pretty well-known reputation in Italy. I was the only female firefighter in my entire fire department in Italy. So everybody knew me by name, knew who I was. And, I loved it. I loved what I did. And then after my 2 years, I got orders to Shaw Air Force Base in South Carolina, which was a huge contrast to Italy, right? Like, that was my payment for getting Italy as my first station was South Carolina. And I was excited. I thought this is another chance to start over. It's another chance. It's a clean slate. You're going to a new base. And unfortunately, I found out shortly after I got there that I'd won Military Firefighter of the Year coming from Aviano, which is a huge honor recognition. That award is a peer-nominated award. So my male peers from the fire department, I didn't even know they put me up for that. And about a month after I got to Shaw, my guys from Aviano congratulated me because it had the firefighters ball. And we like to clown a lot. So I honestly thought they were joking. I thought they were just like teasing me and like being jerks, like they, play games and pranking each other.
Yeah.
And they were like, no, you really won this. And my fire chief's wife messaged me and she was like, congrats on winning that award. And I was like, whoa, super proud moment. Probably the highlight of my career. It's such an honor to have that. And unfortunately, a lot of the guys at Shaw, some of them were like, oh, what did you do to get that award? And it was like, what? So it was disheartening. It was really disheartening because I think the reason, yes, I did everything I could to learn about my job and to take every extra course that I could and to get every certification that I could and upgrade training and all of that. Right. But I truly had a passion for it, which made me that much better at what I did. Because when you have a passion for something, you can't beat passion. Like, yeah, people can train and they can get better and can practice and skill. But if you are not passionate about what you're doing, it is really hard to compete with somebody that is.
Yeah.
And it was tough. There was a lot of tough, it really kind of, I had my first contract was 4 years, and it was like, I don't want to get out, but I was miserable. I mean, to be honest, I was so fed up, and I was testing for staff sergeant first time and had a really good shot at making it. And I decided, you know what, I'm going to go guard. I'm going to go guard because I want to still stay in the military, but I don't want to stay here. And I guess my first sergeant's better, he was super pissed. Like, why are you leaving us? You're going to be a great NCO. And I said, thank you, sir, but it's just my time is going somewhere else. And I ended up in North Carolina. I re-enlisted with North Carolina Air National Guard at the end of 2012. They did not have any slots for firefighters at the time. They had everything filled. And so even though I came in fully qualified and trained, I would have been sitting around waiting. And that's how I made my transition to Air Evac. And it was amazing. I didn't think I would love any other job as much as I love firefighting. And it's medical. So we obviously Air Evac we work on the back of C-130s, C-17s, pretty much deployments could be any plane. And found my passion for the medical side as well. So I cross-trained in 2014 and went back for a very rigorous course as well. Very, very long, 6 months at Fort Sam Houston, about 90 days of clinicals and seasonal training combined. And then you have flight school and all the other fun stuff. I made my way back to Colorado, which is where I'm from, in 2014. I missed home. I'd missed out on a ton being gone on deployments and overseas, and decided to make my way back there. And that's how I ended up in Cheyenne, Wyoming with the guard unit up there, because Colorado does not have a guard air evac unit. And I was transferring from North Carolina to the closest one. And took a contract job in the Marshall Islands for a year, took a year off. My commander allowed me to go as a firefighter, came home and was expecting to, jump right into Med Evac and get going in that field. And they came to me and said, hey, we got triple tasks in the fire department, and your primary FSC is fire. We need you in fire. And I was like, what? I'd been out of the, yeah, because you don't hear about that happening that often. And I'm like, I've been out of the career field for almost 4 years. And yes, I was testing on the civilian sector for fire departments for Denver Fire and had done really, really well, but was still in the testing process. And so, of course, I didn't want to shirk my duty you're in the military. You don't want to say no to that. I mean, technically I could have, but I'm like, I'm obligated to this and they need me. So I guess I'll go. And looking back on it, there was a lot of regret. There was a lot of like, I should have said no to this. I should have, because it was Kuwait. It was supposed to be my cake deployment. There's a pool and there's a movie theater.
Right.
Like, oh, this will be easy, And so I left July 2016 for that. And unfortunately, within literally the first month or two, everything kind of unraveled. I met a guy at the pool, and he, honestly, looking at it, he was basically like a predator. I mean, he came up to me, he started, having a conversation with me, and I'm a very friendly person and didn't think anything of it. I'm not there to date anyone or hook up with anyone, or, that just wasn't my style, and was there to focus on me. And he just kind of continued hanging out with me and wanted to hang out more and more. And next thing you know, we're like casually seeing each other. And I found out that he had lied about being married. It took me 3 different times to get him to full on admit it. And I was furious because I'm like, my career is my life and I love what I do. And I am not going to let some jerk off destroy that because, and unfortunately you see it all the time. You see people cheating, and especially on deployments, and it's upsetting. It's really upsetting. Yeah. So I was furious and I was like, don't ever talk to me again. I want nothing to do with you. And that was where things got really bad. I actually was going and seeing my chaplain because this guy had gotten so possessive and literally obsessed and stalking me in the deployed location. I mean, he was interrogating his friends because I was really good friends with his friends, and they would hang out with me still. And they were, kind of feeding back like, hey, they go back to their dorms and he's like, what are you doing hanging out with her? I mean, it was crazy. Looking back on it, it was so insane. Like just the events that surrounded that. And unfortunately, they were getting ready to leave. They were in a ahead of me. So their rotation was over and I was staying. And that's when the physical and sexual assault occurred, literally back to back one night and then the next night. And, I was scared for my life. I mean, I was, like I said, talking to a chaplain because I was so terrified. I didn't even want to come forward while he was there. I'm like, this guy will probably kill me. He'll probably kill me if I come forward and actually report him and report what he did to me if he is still here in the deployed location. And my chaplain felt the same way. He was highly concerned for my safety, and he was, doing what he could to best support me. And he was amazing. Had I not had him, who knows where. And looking back as well, I had amazing support from my leadership. Once I did finally come forward, and I waited until he left he was, I was so scared. I even waited till he got stateside. So there was no risk of him coming back, because I was that intimidated and that scared of him as a person. I mean, he was out of control, and I do not get easily intimidated. I'm not a very, easily intimidated person. So that says a lot. And when I came forward, it was initially, it was done properly. OSI started investigating, and I had a SARC, rep that I went to. And I actually, looking back on it, I was so in denial about what had happened to me. I was thinking about the physical assault. I was like, this guy physically assaulted me. And that's when I went to security forces. And they were like, the minute I started telling them that he had tried to force himself on me, it was like, hold on, this is sexual assault. And I was like, what do you mean? I freaked out. I'm like, what do you mean it's sexual assault? Like, I'm not, what? And they left me in this room, and they had to call in the SARC and all that stuff, right? The procedural, because I did unrestricted. And looking back on it, it was like, wow, I actually sat there, and it was so traumatizing that I was even in denial about my own assault. I sat there in my head and was like, well, it's like, no, this is wrong. This is insane. This is not how people behave. This is not how anyone behaves, but especially NCOs in the United States military.
Yeah.
No, regardless of it's unacceptable. And so I stayed in the AOR. I stayed in Kuwait. They kept me there. I was NCOIC of logistics, and, I had a very stressful job. I was in an E7 position. I was an E5. I was going to school. I was dealing with a shoulder injury. I was dealing with a back injury, and then my assault. And it was hard. I was not in alignment with the person I am now. I was angry. I was just lashing out at everyone and everything. And I honestly don't know how I even made it through the rest of the deployment, because this was barely halfway when this happened. I mean, we weren't even quite halfway yet when all of this occurred. And I had to stay there for the duration of it, which I still to this day really don't understand the point of leaving me there, especially with all the things kind of mounted against me. But again, I had a phenomenal fire chief and a phenomenal supervisor, and my commander. I mean, they 100% backed me up. They supported me. They did, they were like, whatever you need from us, we are here for you. And that was a big, again, that really got me through, I think, the rest of the deployment, and having the people that I knew I could talk to about it. Had I not had that, it probably would have been a completely different story. Who knows where that would have been, because I was already feeling that with the support. So you can imagine not having that support. And, you hear the stories of other females and even males that when they're going through that assault, they don't have that support from their leadership. It's like, whoa.
Yeah.
It's heartbreaking. So yeah, that happened, came home, and unfortunately, the worst case scenario occurred. I'm sure you probably pay a little bit of attention to what's being passed in Congress right now as far as DoD procedures, and with, specific branches, which is, I'm so glad to hear, and so happy to hear that they are finally, taking extra steps to make sure that they handle these investigations properly, because we turned it over as a command directed investigation. After OSI completed their investigation, they turned it over to his command. And because by this point, of course, he's home, he's stateside back at his base, he's active duty, and his commander completely protected him.
Yeah.
Completely. And, a lot of people said, how can you not hate? Because I wanted to stay in. I didn't want to get out. I mean, I loved, I was like, I had no issues with staying in, but it's like, because you can't blame the whole Air Force for that. And I know that it's not the Air Force's problem, or it's not, a DoD or a military problem. It is those select people who chose to behave and to handle things the way that they did. And yes, they're key people, their leadership, or their, whatever their position is, but they have to own that. And I recognize that it's not the Air Force's fault, and it's not the Guard's fault, and it's not, all of the big overall head of, it's not their fault. It's the people that were involved in this. His commander, one of them, I mean, this individual he's a squadron commander. This person had a duty and a responsibility to handle this properly, and to be told that their reasoning, oh, this doesn't, align with the Air Force core values, and this doesn't align with, how we operate here. And I'm thinking, then why in the world are you protecting this person from doing this?
So let's just make this clear for our listeners. After this assault and the OSI investigation, it was determined that this indeed happened. This member's commander admitted that this member's behavior was not aligned with our core values, however, decided to retain him as a member and not hold him accountable or punish him in any way. Is that what you're saying?
That is absolutely what I'm saying. Yep. They gave him a demotion. So here's what happened. They came to me and said, in the beginning, they told, and I had an SVC, which is a Special Victims Counsel appointed to me specifically. He is literally there for me to protect me as a victim of assault, and that's his job. And so what happened is they came, his JAG communicated through my SVC, and my SVC said, hey, his commander's leading this because it's a command-directed investigation. They have chosen to only give him an Article 130, which is I'm probably getting this wrong. 134, which is adultery, and then the 130, which is physical assault. They refused, the 128, which is physical assault. They absolutely refused to even charge him with the 120, which is sexual assault. That was the first slap in the face. That was like, I'd been home, I think at the time, like barely a month. And I had just found out I had to have rotator cuff surgery. So I'm not adjusting well. You can imagine like coming home from that and trying to reintegrate into life, right? As we all know what that's like, even on a good deployment. So yeah, I'm being told by my lawyer that this is what they did. I was furious. And then they came back and said, okay, well, what would you like to see as punishment? And I'm like, why are you even asking me this? Because you didn't even charge him with sexual assault. You didn't even charge him. So I said to my lawyer, I said, listen, this guy had just made tech sergeant. He made it at the last chance, which was 15 years. As we all know, higher tenure. My thought was, bam, that is exactly what we're going to do. We're going to push for a demotion. Then he'll be back down to a staff sergeant and will be pushed out under higher tenure, and our goal will be accomplished. And I truly, no matter how angry and hurt and destroyed I was, it was not about revenge for me. It wasn't about spite. It was justice. It was doing what was right and what was according to the AFIs in place and according to the Air Force core values and the policies and all this stuff that every single member of the military has heard from day one, briefed that there's zero tolerance policy for sexual assault. There's, just all the things that we hear day in and day out. So to me, it was about justice. It was about doing what was right and holding people accountable for their behaviors and their actions.
Yeah.
So they went back to him or to his JAG. And then the next thing you know, we heard back super quick and we were kind of scared because you don't usually hear, it was literally like a day turnaround. And my lawyer said, so the JAG called and they said that his commander went ahead with his decision without even waiting for the JAG to tell him what we had said. And I was like, what? Why did you even ask me if you're not even listening to your own JAG, which is kind of scary when you think about it. They are there to brief commanders and to give them legal guidance, right? I mean, it was appalling. And apparently he decided to go ahead with the demotion with a suspension to prevent him from being kicked out. Yeah.
Yeah.
Yep. So that was it. He was protected. He was basically given a slap on the wrist. He got to stay in. We had a teleconference after that I requested. We were on the phone. So it was me and my lawyer, his commander, his first sergeant, the base JAG, the base first sergeant or command chief. And again, just the CYA that came out of their mouths, especially his commander. It was, well, this isn't aligned with our core values, and this isn't aligned with our policies, and blah 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 was all I heard. And I was speaking to all very high-ranking officers and enlisted. I was a staff sergeant at the time, and when I got my turn to speak, I'm still in the military, so of course I didn't say anything way over the line, but
Right.
I was very stern, and I spoke my mind freely. And I said, with all due respect, this is disgusting. It's disgusting. It's disturbing that you are supporting this person, because what you're telling me is that this doesn't align with the Air Force core values, and this isn't conducive of a healthy environment, and there's a zero tolerance policy, and then this happens and you basically sweep it under the rug. And this guy had a UIF when he deployed. He was already in trouble when he left for Kuwait.
Mm-hmm.
So why are they protecting him?
Mm-hmm.
And it was infuriating. It was like, how dare you? What would you do if this was your wife? What would you do if this was your daughter?
Right.
Or your cousin? Or what if it was another airman in the same squadron as this person?
Yeah.
And it was crickets, dead silence. Nobody said anything. And I said, this is wrong. This is so wrong on so many levels. And then it was, well, he can't PCS. He can't go TDY. He can't use his TA. I said, I don't care. I don't care about any of that. He does not belong in the United States Air Force. He should be in prison. He should be in prison, and he should not be allowed to serve. It is a privilege and an honor to serve in the military.
Yeah.
And that was it. That was it.
I'm still I'm just so still confused, because so they are okay with accepting that he, did physical assaults, but they just couldn't wrap their mind around the sexual assault. Did they feel like there wasn't enough evidence? Did they ever justify why they decided not to hold him accountable for that?
They wouldn't even touch it. They were so uncomfortable with it. You could tell they were so uncomfortable with it. And I think in their minds, this is obviously my perception of it.
Sure.
This is what I have known from my own journey, and also, working with other victims and assault survivors and hearing other stories. And unfortunately, this was not my first assault. I was raped and drugged at 21 years old. Completely traumatized me. And this I'll bring up later when we kind of get into the aftermath of what happened. But knowing that as well, in my mind, I truly feel that because he didn't full on rape me, they were like, oh yeah, okay.
Gotcha.
And it's disturbing, because if you, hello, the actual definition of sexual harassment or assault, if you want to be technical with sexual assault, it is unwanted sexual contact. And yet people it's like they're so tunnel visioned, or they're so narrow minded when it comes to actual cases of, oh, well, she wasn't raped, so,
Yeah.
And it's like, no, absolutely not. Since when do we put our hands on people inappropriately? Or maybe they thought because we dated before, even though we weren't currently involved then. I don't know. I think it was a combination of those. Again, it's my perception. I don't have, they refused to talk about it, because you could tell they're so uncomfortable with it. And it's disturbing, because it doesn't matter what happened, what the actual details of what he did to me. It's sexual assault.
Yeah.
It is sexual assault. And there shouldn't be any laws are not written to be like, oh, well, it has to be raped. No. Are you kidding me? It's unacceptable. And especially because the guy outranked me. He's an NCO, for crying out loud. What if I was an airman and this happened to me? And, not that I think maybe I felt a little bit more that I could stand up for myself, because I too was an NCO. But it's a slap in the face. It is. It's a slap in the face to not only the programs that these SARC coordinators and VAs run, and it's the wall that they go against. Every time I tell my story, that's what I hear. They're like, this is why we continue to have this stuff happen in the military because of the way that people handle the cases. And then it also prevents other people from actually wanting to come forward, because if someone else hears my story or they had something else, it's like, yeah, why would you want to come forward and report that?
Right.
You know?
Right. So that is such an unfortunate story, though not uncommon, unfortunately, throughout the DoD. And you made a very good point. This is not a DoD standard in any branch of the service. These are individual people who make the decisions that they make for whatever reason, not because the DoD necessarily directs them to go that direction. And so I still have faith in the system in which I serve, and hopefully I won't run across leaders who would handle something so traumatic to another member in that light. But you have taken this unfortunate situation and taken control of your life. And that's what I love about this story. It's about resiliency and survival. Although you were handed a very unfair hand and something happened to you that should not have occurred, especially at the hand of another military member. However, you've turned that tragedy into some type of a triumph where you can not only help yourself, but help other people. And you started the NLP process. Tell us a little bit about that.
Yes. And so if you're okay with it, we have, I'll back up a little bit because I kind of have to tell the before part of how I got to that journey. So unfortunately, with everything, the case ending that way, you would think that was not the end of it, but at least I could, start the healing process there. I sort of did, because I was coming home to a guard unit. I was put on Meghann orders, which are medical continuation, because of the fact that I had to have rotator cuff surgery and I had a back injury, and then I had the psychological, that alone. Right. And so
Yeah.
I was actually ordered to go to mental health and to start therapy regularly to help me process and handle and heal and deal with my assault. Which is, when you think about it, it's kind of insane, because it's like I was doing my duty by being ordered to go. It was part of my actual treatment plan for my medical continuation orders. And it didn't stop there. Unfortunately, my command did the unthinkable. My command at home. I started doing, I was ordered to come and work and do, I was on active duty orders and just doing everything that I could, and was not doing well. You can imagine, like I said, trying to adjust coming home from that, processing. You're not the same person. It doesn't matter what you do. You're never going to be the same person after that, ever.
Yeah.
It's impossible. So it's trying to find the new normal and trying to readjust. And that started the downhill of my career. And looking back through it, again, yes, I have healed a lot, so I can talk about it and I'm not as triggered by it. And I don't just feel that rage and that anger, because what was done was almost, to me, in my eyes, the betrayal was almost worse than the assault.
Yeah.
And that's insane to think about. I was ordered to go to therapy. I was diagnosed with PTSD-MST, which is military sexual trauma. It is so bad that the VA, the military, has its own category.
Yeah.
That's how bad it is. And I wasn't affected at work. I was still showing up to drill. I was not only working full time on active duty orders, and I was coming to drill every single month as well. And I was pulling station captain. I was told I actually was told in Kuwait I was going to be promoted to a tech sergeant. I had been given my promotion information, and it kept being pushed back and pushed back and pushed back. And the minute that I was told that I had PTSD-MST, next thing you know, my unit starts taking it upon themselves to start saying, okay, you're going to be kicked out. We're going to start a med board on you because you can't stay in. And I was like, wait, what? Hold on a second. What is happening? What in the world is going on here? Because I know, yes, it's the Air Force. We handle stuff differently than other branches. I think because we don't have a lot of combat, because we are not typically a combat branch. We don't see it as much as the Army or the Marine Corps, or even, like Navy SEALs and stuff. There are so many people that still serve well with PTSD from combat.
Absolutely.
And yet my people are like, nope, you're going to get kicked out. We're going to med board you. And I, of course, immediately got defensive, because I'm like, I have worked my butt off. I've given everything in my life. I was halfway through nursing school to start my commission process, because I had, gone to Air Evac and was a med tech, and I wanted to continue on with that. And become a flight nurse in my unit and commission. And they're telling me that I can't serve anymore because of my assault that happened on a deployment.
Yeah.
So I went into not only survival mode, but I didn't trust anyone. I cut off communication with everyone in my wing, pretty much. I felt isolated. I felt alone. I started losing friends. I started downward spiraling because I didn't have any resources. I mean, I had gone to my command, asked them for help, and they told me, we don't care. This is your wing. This is where you're going to work. These people went out of the way to attack me. They accused me of fraud with my shoulder because they saw a video of me working out. I'm a personal trainer and a fitness instructor. I ran PT in the Air Force. I had full range of motion in 4 months, which is unheard of for a rotator cuff tear. Usually it's 10 to 12 months because I had worked that hard on making sure that I would still be able to be a firefighter and then also do my job as a med tech. And I had the JAG at my wing accusing me, telling my victims advocate he was going to charge me with fraud because they saw me in a video on Facebook. And it was within my profile parameters. I was getting ready for my PT test, and I had clearance from my surgeon. And that started it. It was like they were looking for anything to come after me. They told everybody they violated HIPAA. They said I was emotionally unstable. They said I was a horrible firefighter and a horrible NCO. And I had 10 years with not even a verbal counseling on record. I had numerous Air Force Achievement Medals and ribbons and awards and commendations and Military Firefighter of the Year. And that these people were acting like I was the biggest dirtbag airman and person to ever come into the Air Force. And they went into full on attack mode. And they were pissed that I stood up for myself. They were furious. I filed IG complaints. They lied to my congressman in congressionals. They lied to everybody. They blatantly did stuff with my lawyer. When my lawyer filed an expedited transfer for a request, they denied it and then turned around and lied to my congressman about it, to the point that I finally had a transfer. I was literally leaving to go. The IG luckily had stepped in and said, yes, this is a volatile workplace. This is retaliation. This is unacceptable. They had me drilling with Colorado Guard. And I had a signed transfer from my wing commander. My fire chief and my squadron commander slapped me with a bad RE code. And they said all this stuff. I mean, I was late one time on a government travel card for $60. And they said that was one of the reasons. They were looking for my lawyers, like they're doing whatever, they're on a witch hunt. They're doing whatever they can to get rid of you. And I threw a Hail Mary pass and contacted the Adjutant General of the state of Wyoming. And he came in and said, no, you're not going to do this to her. They reversed it. They had to let me out. And then they refused to sign my PHA and my contract ended. And that's how I got out. Yeah. And I had the rug pulled out from underneath me. I mean, within 3 months, I was, again, in a situation where I was completely in denial about myself. I was devastated. I'd lost my career. I'd lost being a firefighter. I couldn't get out of bed every day. I laid in bed and wished I was dead. But I also had in my mind thinking the actual thoughts to myself, like, well, I'm not as bad as people who have actually killed themselves because I'm not planning my suicide and I'm not like, this is how I'm going to do it. But looking back on it, I was lying to myself. I was lying about how bad I actually was. And it was barely 3 months. I mean, this was spring of 2019 and I got out November 27th, 2018. And it was embarrassing. It was horrifying because I am a very motivated, high energetic, hardworking go-getter. And here I am with nothing. In my eyes, I had lost everything that I cared about, and there was no reason to live anymore. And I would beg God every single day to just come take me out so that I didn't have to do it. Like, just let me die in my sleep, or just let me, And luckily, I had actually already started Deadlift Diva at that point, my fitness business online, and I had gone to a couple Tony Robbins events and over the years, and had gone to some masterminds with these people that I knew that were online, entrepreneurs, network marketers, and kind of found my way through that. And one of the girls had been in Colorado, and she said to me one day, hey, I was just in Boulder for this NLP course, and I want you to reach out to my coach, to my mentor who ran this program. And I honestly, I was skeptical. I'm like, there's nothing that's going to be able to help me, because I was that far. Like, no. I didn't think anything could help me, really. I was so skeptical and cynical. I was like, okay, yeah, I'll check it out, but I don't think anything's going to help save me at this point. Right. And that's hard. That's hard to say that, to admit that, but that was my thought process. And so I reached out to her mentor, and I, went up to Boulder, which is 30 minutes north of me. And I met with my mentor now. His name's Scott. He's an amazing, amazing human being. Has been on his journey. He was a recovering alcoholic and drug addict, but has been really an NLP coach and mentor for the last 4 or so years with his company. And I met with him, told him a little bit about myself, and he was like, yes, you need to be in my class. You are going to take my next course. And I said, okay, again, what do I have to lose? Because I was so, I was like, nothing is going to help me, but what other options do I have?
Right.
And May of 2019, I went through my NLP practitioner, which includes hypnosis and timeline therapy and releasing major negative emotions tied to trauma, tied to significant emotional events throughout your life. And it's a very intensive 10-day course all day. But the transformation that I have was so profound that I had physical pain. I had my back injury actually flared up at that time from the deployment because it had never been addressed. And I was to the point where I had broken my tailbone and I couldn't even sit on a chair. And I just had all this pain in my spine and my lower back. And the day that I had my breakthrough coaching, which is your day when you take all your skills and you combine them into one as a coach. And we got to do these on our partners because we're training to be coaches. And the first major negative emotion you release is anger. And this is no coincidence, because my hardest emotion to let go of when it comes to the major negative emotions was anger. And people don't know, but anger masks hurt. Yeah. They go in a specific order on purpose. So anger is the first one, hurt's the second one. And of course, now that I know that, I know why. When you have that much hurt in your life and that much trauma, your reaction is going to be so much anger. I mean, I, not only on the deployment, but coming home, I flipped out on people for I had so much, it wasn't even anger at that point. It was rage. And, so I released anger, and it was hard. It was very, very hard for me because I held on to that. That was I had what's called a secondary gain from that, right? It was I had this identity woven into anger, for years and years and years. And when I released it, you're in hypnosis, you're using timeline therapy to go back. And the amazing thing about NLP is that you don't actually talk about your events, which is, great, because that's why so many people have a hard time with therapy, because you talk it out. NLP is not like that. You're gaining a completely different perspective on an event, but you don't have to actually repeat the event because you're not speaking details of what happened. And I'm coming up out of hypnosis, and the room starts spinning, the whole room. I mean, I started getting really dizzy, whoa, what's happening? I'm going to be sick. And I came up out of hypnosis, and I kind of had to take a minute, and sat there, and Scott asked me, what's going on? Are you okay? Because he could tell, something was wrong with me. And I said, I have no idea what happened or why this is happening, but I literally feel nauseous. And as I was coming, back from clearing up all that anger and those events, I started getting sick because the room started spinning, and it was I was dizzy and my equilibrium was off, and I don't know, it's really strange. And he kind of chuckled, and I'm like, what's going on? And he said, Meghann, you just released 24 years of crap that you were keeping in your body, that you were manifesting from all the stuff that you've been through, and it was presenting as a physical ailment. You're keeping that locked in. You're keeping that in your heart and your back and your spine and all these things, right? And I was like, whoa, totally mind blown. And I went home that night and I slept really well. And I came back the next day to do the work, finish my stuff, and then work on being a coach for my partner. So we switched positions. And I got there and I was like, you guys are not going to believe this. I literally have no tailbone pain. I have no physical pain in my body. And they were like, what? And then, again, Scott was like, yeah, because you released all that stuff. I mean, it was showing up as a physical ailment for you because you were so entrenched in that and connected to those negative emotions. It was affecting you on every level. And so that was kind of the first things. I mean, almost immediately, shortly after completing the course, I started reaching out. I was like, okay, because I had never, my own family, I hadn't even spoken to about my assault, and I didn't share like the full story with anyone. And that was how I was like, how do I get my message out to the world? How do I get my story out there to people? Because it's important. And it's important for people to hear what my transformation has been like, but also what I've been through. I just felt this great sense of that I was being called to it. And I didn't even know at that time really what I was doing. I didn't really see it as any type of like business thing. You know what I mean? Like, it was like, I'm just going to share my story because maybe this can help somebody. And so I went live on Facebook and I got huge responses from people, friends as well as complete strangers. And they were like, whoa, this is so powerful. You have to keep sharing this. And that was what started my journey. I mean, I started calling, I sat within like a month and a half. By August of 2019, I was like, okay, how do I get my story out? That was kind of where the fire and the ignition started, right? It was like, okay, again, how do I get my story out to other survivors or to people? Like, who do I need to share this with? And so I just started calling military bases and military installations. And I contacted everybody, and that was it. I mean, I just started getting the word out, and within 6 months, I mean, I was asked to co-author a book. I wrote a chapter of my journey, and that was in a book with 20 female entrepreneurs. And then I had my first speaking event last year at Fort Sam. And really, it's just been since then, just continuing to get my story out there and impact people. And okay, how can I do this? And then I decided to start my coaching business because I'm like, this is important stuff. There are so many people that are suffering and having the same journey that I was. And I know how much I had benefited from having those tools now to understand and grasp how to go after what I want.
Yeah. For sure. Can you share the name of your book as well with you and those other amazing authors as well, so we can go out and grab a copy of that?
Yeah, absolutely. So it's called She Did It. And the Kindle version is on Amazon. And then, of course, we have the hardback copy, which I can give you with all my links and things, but it's through Lulu. And it's a great, of course, I plan on writing my own first book by myself as upcoming event. So that's going to be cool too.
Nice. That your story is just, it needs to be shared. So I'm glad you're continuing to share it. And you mentioned that you have shared this on a military installation, starting with Fort Sam. What was that reception like for those people hearing your story?
It was absolutely amazing. They were so receptive to that. It was the Army South Command that invited me down. I had about 12 people in the room. And then I also had on Video Connect, we had Gitmo and Honduras. So they got to see that. And I am working on a huge event with Fort Bragg right now in the next couple of months. I'm going to be speaking to a very large crowd. So I'm a little nervous about that, but I'm like, this is what I've been asking for. Like, what better way to get this out to people? I have stuff coming up with Hill Air Force Base, and I'm relocated to North Carolina. So Camp Lejeune, and just contact with lots of anyone and everyone, right? I mean, SARCs and VAs and the programs, and who I can share my story with and what we can work on. Because not only is it about sexual assault, it's about suicide too, suicide awareness, because they do go hand in hand, and they're both the hot topics in the military. And how do we create change and impact, but to share it and talk about it and get very vulnerable and raw.
Yeah. I'm actually so glad that your story is not only being shared by one installation, and not just by an Army installation, but Air Force as well. And I hope to the leaders listening out there, you invite her out to come and share her story with your team as well. And let not only her story, but stories like this serve as a source of what not to do, how not to approach the situation.
Right.
She definitely, as a person, is shown us how to overcome a situation or how to deal with a difficult situation like this. But the managing of the situation in the first place, we should have never gotten here. So,
yes. I agree.
Before we go, Meghann, To anyone listening out here who has endured their own type of trauma, may have experienced physical trauma, PTSD, MST, which is military sexual assault, or any of the kind, what advice would you give those women listening today?
First thing is to know who you are. Do not let it define you, because it doesn't define you. My assault doesn't define who I am as a woman and a person. And reach out. It doesn't matter who it is. If you find a place that you feel safe in, even if it's not sharing your story, you don't have to come forward. Just finding a way to push through that, and really understanding that it truly has nothing to do with you. What that other person does, they have to own it. And taking back your power, taking back your freedom from being, damaged or destroyed, or those negative things that we associate with that stuff, because it doesn't define you. You get to take back your power and decide the person that you want to be, and that, you're important and you matter, putting all that self-love into you and the self-care that you deserve.
Meghann Trapp, this has been an amazing story. Thank you so much for sharing. International best-selling author, firefighter, MST survivor, PTSD survivor, resiliency, fitness coach, NLP. You have done it all. And if no one has told you lately, we are very proud of you. Thank you for leading the way, showing up for us, and showing us how it's done.
Thank you so much. I appreciate that, and I received that.
Absolutely. That's it for me, guys. Until next time, be kind